Bueno, vamos a empezar. All right, Travis.
Okay.
Welcome, Travis, to the Signal Science and Mysteries, my YouTube show, and of course to the 4th Congress of UFOs and contacts here on Victory, ENTREVISTA, Argentina.
Well, it's nice to be here. It's my first time, and it's an adventure.
Really, it's an adventure, right? It's your first time in South America?
Yeah. Well, no, I've been to Brazil a number of times. But this is my first time in Argentina.
And how do you feel here in Argentina?
How long?
No, how do you feel? Do you feel welcome? Do you feel
I feel
right?
great. The people are great. The climate is great. I'm enjoying my visit.
Did you enjoy the barbecue, the meat?
Yes, yeah, I'm a carnivore. I enjoyed the food.
well, that's really nice. I'm pleased to hear that. Well, we've been speaking before the interview, and you told me that most of the journalists are very interested on fear and the dark side of the experience you had. So we're going to try to do something different here, not forgetting what you lived, but trying to rescue the message behind your experience, which is kind of different from the film, right?
Yeah.
The film focuses on fear and pain and unsettled feelings, but there is a lot more. And there is something very important for you to know. It is that Travis Walton believes and thinks that whatever was on that ship really wanted to save your life.
That's true.
Let's focus on that. Why do you feel that way? Because going through your story, we all know you get hit by a ray of light. It could be a ray, it could be a beam.
A weapon.
A weapon.
That was my first impression. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to correct any the misunderstanding that I had myself at the time. Taking it, accepting the term abduction, that I was being forcibly taken. But my understanding, it took a number of years, but I do think that my injuries were accidental, that the blast of energy was as an accident, and it just made it necessary to take an unplanned
medical procedure.
Yeah.
An unplanned medical procedure to save your life.
Yeah.
Maybe.
The nearest hospital was over an hour away, and it was certainly very powerful. Definitely caused at least injury, perhaps fatal. But something far beyond the ability of the crew to deal with. Medically, none of those guys knew CPR.
That's kind of hard to think, because you were right in the middle of the wood.
Yes.
So there was no other possibility to get out of there alive. And you think the people on this craft saw you being hidden, or you being hit by the craft, some weapon at the craft, and then they thought, well, we need to do something with this guy. We cannot let him die here.
Yes. It was years later that I learned that that area has the second highest frequency of lightning strikes of anywhere in the United States. It's because of the elevation and the way the storms move up across the mountain, and when they the air is forced to move up high like that, drops their moisture and generates these electrical storms. And so my theory, and this of course is just my opinion, is that the craft generated a sort of a magnetic field just as a side effect of its propulsion, which may have triggered a discharge of this lightning that became a secondary discharge that hit me accidentally.
I see. I see. And that's the reason, maybe, but that's what you think. It's the reason.
And there's
for
some,
you.
there's some the medical test I had afterwards sort of support that.
Okay.
Theory.
I remember you talked yesterday about some neurological tests.
Yes.
And I'm gonna go there in a few minutes. But now we are inside the ship, and what you remember is not everything. For what I've heard yesterday too. So your interaction with these beings, it's quite interesting because you were feeling not so good. They were doing something you didn't understand, and you tried to make them go away. And then they sent you a person.
Yes.
He looked like a human being.
Yeah.
But he also had a helmet.
Yeah.
So that what tells you that
well, the helmet could suggest one of two things. Either the atmosphere inside the craft was not appropriate for humans, or at least that kind of human, or that they anticipated me continuing to be combative out of fear.
You were really upset, right?
Fighting them because I felt pain, and I felt there was a feeling in my body of being mortally wounded, seriously hurt.
Why do you think they sent someone looking like a human being?
Just because it was someone that I would likely not be so prone to resist or fight.
Do you think today they were alien beings, extraterrestrial beings?
Yes, I think that now. My initial impression was that this was just some Earth agency like Air Force or something that was there to rescue me from these beings. But now I think they probably enlisted the help of a species that is similar to humans, or it's possible other people have the theory that they created something, some sort of an android or a robot, artificial intelligence, just to have something that I would cooperate with.
There is some things on your story that which points to the possibility of, like you said, and what you first believed to be an agency or maybe the military trying to save you. Did you ever see any symbols or signs on the suits?
Rank and no insignia of
nothing
of any military affiliation. The only thing that suggests military was that the three human-looking beings were dressed the same. That's kind of a uniform, but there was no like stars and stripes or rank or any indicators of a military connection.
Well, so let's put all this pain behind. Let's go to the moment you left the ship. What do you remember about that? How did you manage to get out of the ship?
My most recent memory was the fear and desperation of trying to find a way out. And so there was quite a bit of relief to be in more familiar surroundings, fresh air, cool outdoors, something I I was an outdoorsman, you know, I worked in the outdoors, so to suddenly feel outside of the craft that way gave me the feeling of having escaped to a very high degree, even though it was dark, you know, it was nighttime, but I still felt a great deal of relief. And,
do you remember how did you get back to the woods?
I woke up lying on the road. It was a place that I recognized. So I saw the lights of the town down below and just ran down in to call my family. And again, you know, the predominant emotion was the panic that I had just most recently been thinking of.
There's another phase for the coin, and that another phase is what lies behind the phenomena, right?
Right.
And that's far more interesting coming from you, Travis Walton.
I've had more than 4 decades to think about why, what was the purpose of this? What is the meaning of all this? Well, one thing that comes to mind right off is, what is their intention? What do they want with us? I was aware of the phenomenon prior to the incident, so it wasn't, but I had always heard stories about people looking up and seeing something and saying, I moved this way and then it moved that way, like it was reacting to me. And I always scoffed at that. I was kind of skeptical that these craft would even care what the person thought. You know, it's a guy, my talk the other day was saying, it would be like walking past an anthill and looking down and seeing an ant and saying, oh, I think I'll stop and have a conversation with that ant.
Oh, hello, ant. How are you?
But I really don't feel that way anymore. I think they do have a personal interest in humans. And
that's because in 2014, there is another experience.
Yes, that's true. And I do think they identify individuals.
All right. Can you tell us that experience and the reason you think they can identify individuals?
Well, our own Earth-based technology. There's a thing in the United States, in Utah, they call it the Utah Data Center. It's a gigantic computer complex that is basically recording every electronic communication on the face of the Earth. I mean, it requires millions of gallons of water just to cool those computers.
Yes.
But that's comparatively primitive technology. That's human technology. If humans can do that, I'm sure the aliens are perfectly capable of identifying individuals. If you saw one when you were 8 years old and you see one again as an adult, they know it's you, and that's not any great feat. They are vastly more intelligent, more advanced than us, and you know, they probably have other means, whether they identify individuals by brain waves or DNA or whatever. I think they know individuals, and
there's a signature they can trace.
Yes. So when I had another sighting in 2014, it was this was in the middle of Los Angeles, a city of millions, and for it to stop over the top of us and then turn and make a right angle turn right there, really. It seems highly unlikely that would be just a coincidence, that they would stop over the top of me with my history and continue on. So that alone shows me an ongoing interest in individuals.
Yes. almost like they were using some kind of GPS over us.
Estás recibiendo la señal.
You told me also that you had some experiences on your childhood, right?
Yeah. I can't prove that, but
no, absolutely.
It's certainly something that I'm certain happened. And to me, it shows that they have an ongoing interest. Why, I couldn't guess. And who could fathom the purposes and intentions of a technology and intellect that's so far in advance of us?
Absolutely, absolutely. What did you see when you were a child? What was it? Was a being? Was a craft?
I saw a small being.
Yes.
It fit the description of the beings that Betty Hill encountered. Small, hairless, large eyes, black eyes, wearing a black suit.
The feeling was the same, maybe comparing with your main experience?
Well, the features seemed the same, but they were dressed differently.
No, I mean your feelings. You were scared?
I was terrified at the time.
Oh.
You don't dream that you're asleep, but I was asleep.
Yes.
And I woke up because I felt my legs being lifted. So you don't dream that you woke up. That's not a dream. That's and I woke up and he was dragging me down the hallway on my bedroll, and I cried out and pointed, and he dropped my feet and took off running. Well, I immediately jumped up and ran after him, or it, and
yes.
He was much faster and disappeared.
Almost like a child also.
Yeah.
Because you yell at him, you point at him, and he just drop your feet and left running.
How do you have a dream where everything's a surprise? I mean, a dream is something you create in your own mind, right?
Yes.
Well, this was all surprise, you know.
Yeah. that was absolutely outside of the box and whatever you can even imagine, right?
Right.
Because you can dream with I don't know, maybe a whale talking to you, but you know what a whale is. But that kind of encounter is absolutely different. What do you think about people that cannot even start to think that there is much more in reality than what we actually see? What can you tell to people that still thinks that abductions and UFO phenomena and other phenomena is like a fairy tale?
Well, I think that people that take that position are really using it as a defense of concepts they don't want to consider because it complicates their lives and adds an element of fear for them that they are trying to avoid. So they try to say, well, I mean, if your parents tell you don't go out there, there's muggers on the street who might rob you, you don't just pretend there's no muggers just so you can feel safe on the street.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's not wise to create the reality you prefer. So it's much smarter if people would just face things as it really is. At the time that this happened, the predominant belief in society was anybody who thinks that there's life on other worlds that might be visiting here is a crackpot, a kook.
Yeah, I understand.
Because you're believing something that's contradicts the prevailing scientific point of view. Well, today, I think that even among scientists, there's much more acceptance of this idea, the actual science involved, the knowledge that the number of galaxies is so huge that to claim that that's all empty and devoid of life, that's what's kook. That's what's crazy, is to think that with billions, no, trillions of planets that we know exist, to claim that this is the only one with life just because it makes you feel safer is a very irrational.
Absolutely. I remember when I was at the primary school, you know, the little ones, and a teacher from science told me it was 1985. That was there was no water on Moon or any other place or planet at the solar system. Now, 20 and a little more years later, we know we have water at the Moon, on Mars, even liquid water, and many other moons around Jupiter and Saturn. And scientists recognize, they think we have life on the solar system, bacterial life, but we have some kind of life, and maybe some complex life on big seas like Europe, the Moon, you know. And overall, the way we see reality is changing every day because of technology, because of who we are, because we are always...
And science is in its infancy. Virtually everything technological has occurred in the last 200 years. I was just reading that it was after 1800 that the Royal Society, that was the premier scientific organization on the planet, didn't even know what heat was. They did not know that it was the rapid motion of molecules.
Yes.
Just as recently as that, they didn't even know what heat was. I mean, they had these things called thermometers, but all they knew was that water freezes at this point and it boils at this point, but they didn't know what heat was. So there's all kinds of things that are brand new for us, and these civilizations, but just Michio was commenting, astrophysicist, on the assumptions people make, and he was saying that people assume these civilizations might be a few hundred years ahead of us. He says, but based on the age of these star systems, they could be literally thousands or millions of years ahead of us.
Millions of years ahead.
And if we've come this far in 200 years, what do they know? What do these beings, what are they capable of far beyond anything we can even imagine?
Absolutely.
So, you know, for our learned men of science to say, oh, they could never come here, it's too far, you know, is absurd.
That's not science, really. Because
Lord Kelvin, he invented the Kelvin temperature scale.
Yes.
He said, mankind will never travel faster than 60 miles an hour. He said all the air will be sucked out of the conveyance and the people would suffocate. Well, you know, there's Stan Friedman has a book called Science Was Wrong.
I was speaking with Stan Friedman.
There's a whole list of stuff
a few weeks ago
that our experts were telling us were impossible or were like this or like that, and it turned out not to be that at all.
Well, do you know Stan Friedman?
I know him personally, yes.
Personally? Well, he's being there in the middle of some of the most important events from UFO phenomena to nuclear history. You know, he's a quite interesting person in that matter. Going back to your case, you've been talking with Stan Friedman. We are speaking here. You've been speaking with a lot of people at the conference. Did you ever share a word with your captors, with those beings? Do you remember something like that?
I do believe that there was other sorts of interaction, and the memories were hypnotically blocked. I can't recall them. Little glimmers came through in the form of dreams, and I know what a dream is, but they were kind of like recovered memories. When I first asked Tracy Torme, the screenwriter on the movie Fire in the Sky,
Yes.
What he thought about these images, I said, do you think they're just dreams, or do you think some of these memories might be returning? He goes, oh, they're probably just dreams because you're doing all these interviews now. And then 20 years later, I asked him the same question. He goes, oh no, those were probably memories leaking back through. I guess he'd studied the phenomena a lot more about the blocked memories, and I guess that's kind of common that people can experience things and then, have these.
Well, there's a mechanism of blocking some memories because of the fear. That's well known.
Yeah.
And then
it's a psychological phenomenon.
Yeah, that's a
but
psychological
the ability for an advanced technology to install a mental block in order to hide something from you, to keep it private from you, or to maybe to protect you from the fear of that memory or whatever. I do believe it's possible, and in my case, I think probably happened.
We can tell your life has been. I'm not trying to say full of cases or experiences, but you had one interesting experience on your childhood. Another one, which is the most known, the most well known, and a third one on 2014 with this triangular object over your car. So, what do you think about people who said that maybe there's a family, even a family thing related to abduction phenomena? Do you think that that's quite possible? I mean, did your sons ever saw anything like a UFO?
Well, I think sightings are pretty common across the planet. It's just that many people don't report them, and sometimes I think people. I don't believe sightings are accidental. They're kind of reported as, gee, I happened to look up and see one, like you caught them in the act or something. It's like the aliens slap their forehead and go, dang, a human spotted me again. I guess I better be more careful next time. I think they're much more intelligent than that.
They're not traveling
I think
millions
when they
of
see
years.
us, they did it on purpose. It's intentional. They're showing us themselves in a very limited, incremental way. People say, well, how come we never get the proof? Well, because the aliens didn't want it that way, you know? And so...
Well, it happens all the time, you know.
And I do
when you're going
that.
to take a picture of a UFO, then suddenly your cell phone is dead. Your camera is broken.
Yeah, and people say, well, how come the picture didn't turn out? Why? Well, the aliens are much more in control of the situation than you might imagine. Sometimes I think people, I don't believe sightings are accidental. They're kind of reported as, gee, I happened to look up and see one, like you caught them in the act or something. It's like the aliens slap their forehead and go, dang, a human spotted me again. I guess I better be more careful next time. I think they're much more intelligent than that.
They're not traveling
I think
millions
when they
of
see
years.
us, they did it on purpose. It's intentional. They're showing us themselves in a very limited, incremental way. People say, well, how come we never get the proof? Well, because the aliens didn't want it that way, you know? And so...
Well, it happens all the time, you know.
And I do
when you're going to
that-
take a picture of a UFO, then suddenly your cell phone is dead.
Yeah.
Your camera is broken.
Yeah, and people say, well, how come the picture didn't turn out? Why? Well, the aliens are much more in control of the situation than you might imagine, in my humble opinion.
Absolutely. Why do you think they're coming here? What's the interest?
You know, I was talking
interesting.
about how they could be millions of years ahead of us, and I say, who could possibly fathom the purpose of a civilization that's that far in advance of us? You know, people think they can guess, and some of the presumptions that they make is that they're here to very sneakily take over the planet and steal the Earth from us, or they need something from here. I think all those theories are absurd. That's real primitive thinking. I don't think that anybody's figured that out, and I am extremely skeptical of any ideas about Earth governments conspiring with the aliens to take over the Earth or in some other way.
No, absolutely.
Collaborate with them against us.
No.
I do not believe that. I think the
We agree.
Earth governments do know more than the average citizen does, but at the same time, I don't think they know everything.
No, but I mean, it's their work too. You know, they need to do that.
Yeah, but people complain that these governments aren't throwing open their books and telling the public what they know. And I'm saying, you know, be careful what you wish for. It's not in our best interest for the governments to make known what they've discovered. There are reasons that it's just in general not good for everyone. If just the concept of free energy could cause a worldwide economic collapse that would result in the death of millions, and so it's not necessarily a good thing for. Well, in the case of the United States, throwing open the recovered technology, the science, it gives us an edge over our enemies on the planet, and it's not in our best interest for our enemies to know everything we know or to know what we don't know. You know, it's best to keep them guessing. So I think the government is. There's nothing sinister in their secrecy. It's in our best interest. I think fear is one of the biggest obstacles to acceptance. If people stopped seeing them as invading monsters, the potential benefits are vast. If we just could make open, acknowledged contact. The science fiction creation of something called the Prime Directive, the Non-Interference Directive, makes perfect sense. That for our own good, they would not just come in here and say, "Here's a bunch of technology. You know, here's a brand new box of
I don't
matches.
think that's going to happen.
Now go play." You know, they're not going to do that because that would be destructive to us. So
And maybe for them.
so there's nothing sinister in their secrecy. It's actually to our benefit. But my goal is to help make humanity ready. That if people are aware of this phenomenon and accepting of it in a way to where it's not going to be destructive, the sooner we get to that point, the better. You can imagine, you know, how badly we treat each other on the basis of differences we have, just human to human. You can imagine how bad we might treat them if they're walking around and looking so totally strange and different from us. The suspicion and theories and the prejudices that would develop are going to be quite extreme, and so we're making it apparent to them that we're not ready for them. So anything we can do to show that we are ready It's not a leap of logic to, you know, think of the kinds of behaviors and social attitudes that might be necessary to get us ready for that day in the future, and it will come.
You think it will come?
Yeah, eventually we'll get there. I mean, if it takes us 50 years, I don't know, but you know, we need to get ready, and anything that we can do to be prepared for them. And it has a whole lot to do with not just accepting the reality of their existence, but also accepting of each other and the kinds of differences that we make too much of or make the wrong thing of. The entire experience was 5 days and 6 hours.
5 days and 6 hours, and you remember maybe?
Less than an hour, certainly.
Less than 1 hour. So there was a lot of things going on you can't recall.
Yeah, there's other things, I think. And they have a purpose. I do believe there's a familial interest or interaction there. But I think it's far more common than anybody imagines. I think that sightings or opportunities for sightings are far more common. Events happen, right? And people don't look up. They just don't look up. There's things up there. You go to these sky watches,
yes,
and invariably something is spotted. It's happening all the time. People just don't look. And people will say, "Oh, I don't believe in such things. I've never seen anything like that." But you want to ask them, "Have you ever looked up?"
That's a good question.
Just try it sometime.
That's a good question.
You know,
because
what a concept.
I was speaking about this with a Native American friend of mine, which is also a very good writer here in Latin America. And we were talking about exactly that point, you know. There's a lot of people complaining about, well, the phenomena, you can never see the phenomena, and, but I don't see people really taking their time to first put feet to earth, and second, pay attention to the surroundings and watching at the sky. And I mean, people doesn't even think in their family. Maybe they're not prepared to start thinking about the phenomena and complex things like what you lived and other cases. What do you have to tell to people who said, I mean, because I heard that, I want to live what Travis Walton lived. Can you recommend that?
Well,
yes or no?
I don't recommend the fear I experienced, but you know, the opportunity to confront beings from another world in a way where you become at least certain of their existence and perhaps their benevolence, I think is a constructive thing. I think my mission is to just bring that out there, that in my opinion, that, you know, there's no evil alien plot and there's nothing to fear.
You told me maybe there's another movie coming?
Well, I was approached by an agent who suggested a remake.
Yes.
He became dedicated to the movie himself because of his own childhood experience. He was 8 years old. His parents allowed him to see the movie, and he was so traumatized that he wouldn't sleep in his own bed that night. Well, they had this earthquake. And
that happened to me too.
and they went into his room the next morning, and the earthquake, the bed was cut in half where he would have been sleeping. So he credits the movie with saving his life.
That was a very good thing then.
Yeah, and so he became interested in the movie itself because it was something that saved his life. But He later suggested that rather than a feature film, that it be a mini-series, which I didn't like at first, but now I think is probably the better choice if I want to get pack as much information in there as possible.
Yeah, and mostly with the streaming services, which are widely used by so many people, and miniseries on these streaming services are really well welcome. So,
well, a 90-minute feature film just focuses on drama.
Action and drama. No? Yeah,
and I'm interested in getting as much factual information out there as possible. So if we partition and ration out the action and drama, we can keep people interested in learning a lot of important things.
What do you think? What do you feel about what happened? Are you happy now?
Well, yeah,
you feel happy.
You have to take what life delivers. You can't erase the past. So I thought about just ignore it, don't talk about it, just put my head down and go to work. And I worked 12 hours a day for years and years, and
you were trying to bury the experience with work?
Yeah, it didn't work. But I think, although people who don't know me might think this whole concept is wacko, I think the people who know me best consider me to be exceptionally rational. Sir,
it's been a real honor to have you here for this conference and for the Signal Science and Mysteries. I mean, I was wishing to know you since I can remember, mostly because of the same thing, the movie. But then I wrote about your case, and I heard a lot of interviews, and I found out that you were actually what can I say? No, I'm not saying that you were happy, but you think that they actually saved your life, so you have some quite good things to say about them. So it was nice to find that you feel all right, and at the end of the day about that. And I think
this is an important understanding to get out there, and there's a heck of a lot to say, a lot more to say.
Well,
going forward.
Travis, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Nice talking to you.
Right. Thank you. All right. Perfect.